for doing that. So here is Bet Online, the college football playoff odds on who will make the playoff. And it really changes everything because, and that's a big old list, but it changes because really it could include about 30 teams. You know, we always talk about there's like 8 to 12 teams maybe in college football that can win the national title. Well, now it opens up because you're going to have a group of 5 champion among others. Here are the teams at the top, and they are, yes, blue bloods. Oh, Kansas State's involved in this, with all due respect in football, but they are the favorite along with Utah to win the Big 12. Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, Clemson, Florida State, K-State, Michigan, and Utah, and then Miami, 1-1. All of them are even or even better than even odds to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, Miami, I guess, would probably be, in my mind, the biggest stretch there. But now that they've got Cam Ward, that stretch kind of, to get them to 12th, if the roster around him is as good as it kind of looks, because their fronts are pretty solid that Mario Cristobal's built there. I'm surprised Ole Miss is lower than them.
They're 12th. Ole Miss actually, I think, might be actually 12th among them. Yeah.
That are behind them in those odds, and even behind Kansas State for that matter. There are some surprising teams on this list towards the bottom, particularly Florida, given their schedule.
Well, yeah, but that's
only being 20-1.
Yeah,
like, I mean, that to me, like, their schedule. Look, if Florida gets to that schedule and gets in the playoff, Billy Napier is
coach of the year,
coach of the century.
Yeah,
given what he's built out of what would be a 5-7 team that lost its 2 best offensive players, one to the draft and one to your arch rival Georgia. And Trevor Etienne is now the starting running back for the Bulldogs. So, but yeah, this is a pretty interesting list. To see Arizona on a list to make the playoff has got to blow their fans' minds.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to unpack this. I don't have enough room in my brain to try to break that down by conference because just seeing like the cluster of like 3 ACC teams there all near the top. And with, particularly because of Miami, Florida State and Clemson, I don't think come as much of a surprise, but Miami, obviously with Cam Ward, that's changing the narrative around them in a great deal, in a great way. So a lot of optimism for them. And just a nice scattering of teams from all over, really, from the Big Ten, from the SEC, from the ACC, from the Big 12. And I'm trying to see if there's any schools that aren't involved in those 4 too. And I don't think that there are. I think that's pretty much just those 4 conferences. Just kind of playing along in my head there. K-State being the best odds in the Big 12, I don't think is much of a surprise, and Utah's not far off. So that's just kind of the common theme that's developed now here this offseason. I noticed yesterday in talking about the Big 12 odds that apparently those got taken down for a while because I think – based on the couple of tweets that I saw, I think a lot of money started coming in on Oklahoma State. And what did we talk about yesterday? Like they were ridiculously low. And I think everybody caught up to that and was hammering that. And so see them there towards the bottom. And I think that they're a great value. They're at 8-1 because I think that they are going to definitely be in the mix. The Arizona thing, they're getting a lot of credit for last year and just a lot of belief, I guess, that they're not going to skip too much of a beat without Jedd Fisch. That's a lot of faith in the stars they have returning. They've got big-time stars returning, so I get it to some extent, but I don't know, man. I feel like most other programs lose their head coach, and they're going to drop a little bit, but Arizona seems like they've just maintained their kind of place, so that's great for the Big 12 if they do. Looking around elsewhere, is this going to be the new norm for Oklahoma? Being like 20-something in best odds?
They surely don't have the same steam that Texas has.
No, not at all.
By any means, according to anybody.
Yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah, and this is obviously, like you said, this is to make the playoff. This is like it's not national championship odds, but it's actually kind of more fun because of that, because there are so many teams that are involved, and it's not just the typical 4 or 5 that are the usual. So, I see Oklahoma down there, and I don't know if that's going to be fun to live that life year in and year out where you're that far down. But, yeah, you're definitely not dealing with the same amount of lightning in the bottle that Texas seems to have. But looking at what the 7th or 8th or 9th best team in the SEC as far as odds go is probably what they are. I mean, there's Georgia, there's Texas, there's Ole Miss, there's Tennessee, there's Alabama, there's LSU,
There's 11 teams.
A&M, there's Missouri, there's Auburn, 9 teams from their own conference in front of them, guys. Like that's just a new reality that's going to take some getting used to, and you can just go win and smash all that, because this doesn't mean anything in the long run. But that is notable for me as somebody who follows Oklahoma. Of just they're usually more at the top of lists like this or closer to the top in just national championship odds, much less the playoff being like the 9th best odds in their own conference. So that's going to take some getting used to for sure. But yeah, that's really interesting to pick apart and look through and kind of dive into, and we can do that all summer, really.
Well, and we'll do it even now. Pat Smith will join us at 3:40. The Big 12 has tied for the second most teams, 8 among those 33 names that are on the particular graphic. And, of course, it keeps going and going and going. The SEC has 11. The Big 10 and the Big 12 both have 8. Does the Big 12 have 8 because they have that many teams that could make the playoff? And I know at least one. Or is it because no one really knows? Although Kansas State, Utah, Arizona seem to be getting most of the love in the 8 of the Big 12.
I think it's just because it's so wide open. I don't think you can really guarantee much. You can definitely assume that those will be the better teams. Like I see Texas Tech there. I'm sure there's some people that get pretty good or see pretty good value in them that believe they might be one of the better teams. There's Iowa State as well. Along with Oak State right there in that bottom tier or close to bottom tier. But I think, I think that's just as much of the conference is going to be kind of a wide open race, and nobody really knows, especially with this new iteration, of what all that's going to look like. And so I think that's a big part of it. I think for the SEC, you're going to probably get like 3-4 teams in, right? So you can bet on multiple teams. I think with the Big 12, you're looking at the 1 and maybe 2. Maybe 2. We'll see like where that second team would fall, but yeah, I don't think you can really distinguish too much. So it makes sense to have a lot of teams kind of grouped together there, because from Oklahoma State up to Kansas State, I think every team listed there is somebody that's been talked about in some form or fashion somewhere. As far as being a contender, although with Arizona, I'm very curious about why there's not much of a drop-off post-Jed Fish. But again, it probably has to do with their star players being back, and that makes some sense.
All right, so you have the Dogs, and as I mentioned, I think there are 11 teams. I believe it's 11, all the way down to Miami, that are at 500 or what 1-to-1 even odds or even better. I mean, 1-10 means you're in. 1-10 means you're in. Texas and Oregon in. It'll be fun to watch this, and this is where we are. That's a large list, and one of the things that did surprise me, independent, by the way, Notre Dame is in there. They're the only non-Autonomy 5 school. There's 4 of those now.
Autonomy 4.
Autonomy 4, excuse me. You're right. Now with Notre Dame, and they are in like the 20th spot or so.
The Pac teams aren't on there, whatever you want to phrase them as, A5.
Washington State and Oregon State are on this list.
They're not on there. Yeah.
So here's my question. There will be a group of 5 team. Mm-hmm. You would have thought that one of them, you would think that you could take a shot at one of them that's going to be, because someone's going to get in. And yet there's nobody in the top 33, maybe because is it going to be Boise State? Is it going to be, is it going to be James Madison? And we'll have a note about them in a moment. Who's it going to be? And I'm just throwing out those particular names. Who will be, is it going to be Liberty? Who is it going to be? But nobody that slid inside that top 33, at least for right now. So 11 in the SEC, 8 Big 10, 8 Big 12, 5 in the ACC. A lot of theirs are at the top. Most of theirs are in the upper half. NC State slightly below that part. India Independent is Notre Dame, and then group of 5, none.
Just a quick perusal of a couple of, way too early top 25 rankings. The only one I've seen, and I've gone through 3 or 4 of them, that has a G5 team in it is Pro Football Focus had Liberty at 25. So that's not Tulane or Boise State or anyone like that. So that'll obviously change as the season gets started. And look, there are some teams on this list that their odds will go way down as soon as that first ball is kicked off, and you see like, oh, well, they're not really that good. Look, Auburn made the list, and as of now, like if you ask Hugh Freeze who the quarterback's going to be, he'll go, do you want to do it? So I don't know, like
But one of the things about the SEC, not only do they have 11 teams, that's not a surprise, is the fact that they could end up with 3 or 4 teams among the 12. And so that kind of branches out even more to grab onto others, not just Georgia, Texas, or whoever else might be a part of the alphas, at least from what we think right now.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of July, August, we'll be sick of odds, and we'll be sick of, I mean, it'll be on to point spreads and things like that for a lot of people. But while I typically can just sort of roll past national title odds in the month of February because, okay, let me go ahead and name the 5 teams for you that have the odds, this is actually kind of fun, is it not, to see like a long list and say, like, you know what, this isn't just going to be 4 of these teams, so go ahead and cut this list in half and throw away the rest of it. 12. This is just to make the playoffs. So you got 12 of these teams, not to mention everybody else in college football who'll be eligible. And to me, I don't know what that'll look like in the postseason, but that's kind of fun. So I think that's actually interesting and should make it more exciting.
If it was a 4-team playoff, Craig or Paul, that list would be different. It wouldn't change who's at the top, but the odds of getting in it would be even much less.
Yeah.
Because there's only 4 of those babies available. And instead of 12. All right, so there's that. Kind of chew on that a little bit.